Discovery class, during the months of this summer, my lessons are going to be personalities in the Bible. And in your Bible, in God's library, there are 1,189 chapters. In those chapters, there are 2,872 personalities. 20 Nathans, 30 Zacharias, 20 different Jonathans. Some names in the Bible only appear once. Others, they make up the entire book. Job, Daniel, Samuel, Isaiah. Our lesson today comes out of the book of Esther. But today's lesson may not be suitable to all audiences, so viewer discretion is advised. Have you ever been asked to do something that you knew was wrong, and it cut against everything that you stood for? To make it worse, the one who asked you to do it was your spouse. That's my lesson today. It comes right out of this book, and here it begins in verse 3 of chapter 1 of the book of Esther. I'll read it. In the 3rd year of his reign, King Xerxes gave a banquet for all his nobles and officials. The military leaders of Persia and Media, all the princes and all the nobles of the provinces, they were all present. Xerxes was an ambitious monarch. He's going to launch a campaign against his neighbor, the Greeks. To be a success, he needs help. So, he goes to the Persian nobles and he asks the officials, the princes and the governors, military personnel, members of his cabinet, all his chiefs of staff, to give their support. Now, Xerxes, he lived in the city of Susa, in a lavish citadel that towered over every other building in the city. And from there, he had his seat of power. And you could see it for miles when you were approaching it from the outside. Xerxes at this time is 35 years of age. He's in the prime of life. Very tall, handsome, and extremely rich. Everything about him speaks of opulence. Couches in his living room, made up of silver and gold lined. Pavement on which he walked and had his chariots. Marble and costly stones. Wall hangings, white and blue linen. Columns lining the palace hall, over 70 feet tall and 36 in number. Massive ceiling timbers, supporting the hand-carved stone bulls on top of each of those columns. And all of the floors where he walked boasted mosaics of very expensive works of art. King Xerxes was the wealthiest monarch at that time on earth, and he loved to show it off. When he called the meeting for all the leaders in Persia to support his invasion of Greece, he promised them wealth and he promised them reward if they would become his warriors. And to prove his credibility, he threw a party. He bribes them. Everybody's invited. And it's going to last for 6 months, half a year. And it's going to be the mother of all parties. But it was nothing but decadence and extravagance. Let me read it for you. Verse 4, Esther 1. For a full 180 days, Xerxes displayed the vast wealth of his kingdom and the splendor and glory of his majesty. And when these days were over, the king gave a banquet lasting 7 days. And in the enclosed garden of the king's palace, for all the people from the least to the greatest, who were there in the city of Susa, came to celebrate. Well, it's easy to figure out what's going on here. There's drinking. There's dining. Every table is a feast. Bottomless drinks. Guests from all over the nations present, indulging in every desire. Wine was the water. Choice of call girls every night. And overseeing the whole event, King Xerxes. 6 months of the finest food and erotic entertainment that the heart could desire. Now, everything that I have said leads me to my punchline. It happens on the last day of the feast. Esther 10, the verse in chapter 1. In high spirits, from wine, King Xerxes, he sends for Queen Vashti, his wife. He's going to show her off. In verse 11, it says that she was lovely to look at, meaning he wants her to dance in front of all the guests, and he knows that he's going to be the envy of the banquet when she does. Let me give you a little background to the country of Persia, where all this is taking place. Persia, I repeat, Persia is not the country where any of you ladies that are listening to me would like to live. It isn't safe for a woman to live in Persia at that time. All females were only property. You were simply just a possession, a little higher than the animals in your barn. Imagine, you're worth just 2 steps ahead of a pig or a goat. That included the queen. She was simply a chattel for King Xerxes. Most of her time was spent living in a separate palace, not with him, hidden away, and she was only brought out when the king wanted her. When she was called, the best hairdressers would be summoned. Clothing maids would be summoned. Beauty patrons showed up. They preened and they pampered her for hours in preparation for her appearance before the king. All she was simply a trophy to be shown off, nothing more. Her main function in life was to make Xerxes look good, feel important, be happy, and serve him. Let him be served. You're just a serving vice. Would you like to do that, ladies? Well, that's a little different. You would say, to the day I live, today. So what was it on the final day of the banquet and the party that Xerxes wanted his wife to do? I'll tell you. In showing her off, her coming into the banquet hall, she was going to be paraded in front of all the big shots in the kingdom. And they were all intoxicated drunks, out of their minds, including the king. Do you remember how I started the lesson? I told you, have you ever been asked to do something that you knew was wrong, and if you did it, it compromised every moral vein in your body, your whole reputation lost, right in an instant? Well, Xerxes wanted his wife to parade herself in front of all these strange men, only wearing the crown on her head. These men, they've been away from their wives for months. Now standing in front of them is the most beautiful beauty queen in all the country. What do you think's going on in their head? But what decent husband do you know that would make his wife do that? Here's what happened. Queen Vashti, Xerxes' wife, she looked at him and she paused and she gave him an answer. She said, "No, I'm not doing that. I'm not prancing in front of hundreds of male drunks. Xerxes, my husband, you find somebody else to do your exotic tricks. It's not going to be me." What do you think is going to happen to that question? I'll tell you. Whatever could go wrong is going to go wrong. Verse 12. The king became furious, and he burned with anger. Her decision really ticked him off, and his whole life went into a tailspin. All I can say is good for you, Vashti. Well done. You didn't let him get away with it. The mighty global billionaire, ruler over 127 provinces, controlled the energy and the raw material of the then known world, put in place by his wife's modest behavior. For 6 months, he has pampered and indulged the world's elite. And on the last night, when he was about to be presented with his Super Bowl, everything in his world falls apart. Good for you, Vashti. In the presence of all his drinking buddies, he's been embarrassed. He's been humiliated. He's been made to look as a weak dictator. And what's he do? He's going to call a special cabinet meeting. He's going to fix this thing. He's going to call his 7 chiefs of staff. But these experts, so-called, they're really as stupid as he is. And they're just as intoxicated. And they come up with a decision. Verse 16, Esther 1. Queen Vashti has done wrong, not only against the king, but against also all the nobles and the peoples in the province of the king Xerxes. For the queen's conduct will become known to all the women. And so they're going to despise their husbands, and they're going to say, King Xerxes commanded Queen Vashti to be brought before him, but she wouldn't come. How's that for a cabinet decision? Made by 7 out-of-touch, arrogant, blind drunks. All cabinet minister experts. High school dropouts could do that. And they were overruled by fear. Their whole world was falling apart, they thought. I can just hear the discussion behind the closed doors. Women will now become free thinkers. Men, they'll have to start respecting their wives. Every young daughter will now think that there's life outside the kitchen. Worst of all, girls in the kingdom are going to get the bright idea that they can even one day become a teacher. If we let this happen, do you know what's going to happen? Well, the whole world is going to spin off its axis. That's what's going to happen. Here comes the new law, written by these wonderful members of the Supreme Court of Persia. Verse 19. Let it be written in the laws of Persia and Media, which cannot be altered or repealed, that Vashti is never again to enter the presence of King Xerxes. And when the king's edict is proclaimed throughout all the vast realm, all women, all of them, are going to respect their husbands, from the least to the greatest. Ladies, are you listening to what I'm saying? I can hear some of you saying, well, Ron, what's in this lesson for me? Surely you don't think that I'm as ignorant as King Xerxes. And I'm certainly not as dense as anybody in his inner circle. Don't think that, Ron. Well, this lesson is about you. And I hope you're rolling your eyes in disgust. And I hope that's your conclusion. And if it is, then my mission as a teacher is accomplished. Now, although this story is 2,500 years old, I'm afraid it's still right up to date today. And not much has changed in men's hearts. The story of Vashti is the tale of somebody who dared to separate herself from what the world wanted. Have you separated yourself from what the world wants? Well, listen, that's not easy in our society. When Jesus left this earth and he returned to heaven, he left a great big billboard for mankind to witness and follow. That billboard is called the church. And from the church, God displays his glory and he displays his goodness. And it's there that we learn to worship him. We learn to love our neighbors. We learn to cherish our families. We learn to love our spouse. God's message is really the church billboard. It's easy, however, to forget your calling. The story of Queen Vashti is a nice reminder that Persia and the Xerxes and his inner board members, they're lying to you. You've been sold a bill of goods. Your lifestyle is under attack. It's easy to get lured away. And when it happens, do you know what happens to you? You end up wounded. And you end up guilty. And sometimes you want to quit. Pornography can do that. Oh, it won't hurt. It's only sex. That's what Persia teaches you. Bay Street and Wall Street. Wealthy. Money. That can do it. You are what you own. So own all you can. That's what Persia convinces us. Drinking can do it. Enjoy the high life. It'll take the edge off the day. Persia can prove it. Social media can do it. You know, you're not as cute as you think you are, the social media says to the 12-year-old girl. And here's an innocent girl, as a teenager, told that by Persia. 1 in 4 ages 18 to 24 seriously consider suicide in our day. Well, Persia won't stand in your way. All I'm saying is that Persia still speaks. Queen Vashti's story still speaks. King Xerxes' behavior still exhibits. Do you know that you're God's special possession? You're his billboard in this modern Persia. You're called out of darkness, and now you've become his wonderful light. The God in heaven made you to be more than a bratty king, an indulgent party, or some shameful council member. Remember, you're serving God, and you're serving him now, not Persia, and all that Persia offers. Godless living is no life at all. Vashti tells me, resist the allure. Peter had it right in his book, 1 Peter 2:9. Abstain from sinful desire. Live such good lives among the pagans. He could have just said Persians too. Live such a good life among the pagans, even when they accuse you of doing wrong. They will see your billboard of good deeds, and they're going to glorify your God in heaven. Vashti, you've given me a wonderful example. Thanks. It's right up to date, and we're going to follow you. Well, that's enough for today. Come on back next week. I'll have another one for you. Personalities in the Bible. Brilliant study. I hope you enjoy it with me. See you back.